From supermoms to exhausted women, here is how motherhood and emotional labor keep us tired and trapped. Welcome back to Stay at Home Feminist. Your soft girl era starts here, along with the fall of the patriarchy. I'm Binx, your host. And today we're unpacking some of the sneaky ways that the patriarchy keeps women tied down, trapped, and let's be honest, on the verge of screaming into their pillow. Yep, we are talking about motherhood and emotional labor. Before we get into this, like, follow, subscribe, do all the things for a new show, and we really want to know how our audience is feeling about everything we're putting out this far. Let's dive into how society weaponizes motherhood to control women, and why emotional labor is basically just the patriarchy's unpaid internship for women. And most importantly, let's figure out what we can do to stop playing this game and being cogs in this machine. Buckle up, feminists, because we're calling out the system and we're reclaiming our time. I watched a TikTok the other day, and it was basically a young mom explaining how she's never seen her or any of her mom friends or anyone and she knows be like, I have to leave the kids and go do this, insert hobby, insert activity that takes a whole day. Whereas most of the dads that are affiliated in this mom group, the mom's partners, every Sunday, every whatever day, depending on the sport, let's say Sunday, we're in football season, let's say it's Sunday, they're it's Sunday. I gotta leave the kids, I gotta not be on duty as a dad, and I gotta go watch the game. And the point she was making was dads get to do that. Moms don't get to do that. I can't think of one thing where it's yeah, maybe the mom will do her Pilates class on Sunday, but that's an hour, 2 hours max if the gym is far and it's a long drive. But there is nothing that women really get to just clock out of being a mom. It seems a lot more acceptable by society that men get to do that. And I think this analogy of the game is on, the sports are on, of course the man gets to go watch and don't worry, we'll take care of the kids, or moms will take care of the kids and the dads get to do whatever, is the perfect example to demonstrate how emotional labor shows up in heteronormative relationships and what that means for the extra burden that are placed on moms and on women opposed to their male father counterparts. Often when moms do get time on their own, they're holy cow, I gotta do the laundry, take out the trash, load the dishwasher, cook the meal because baby's down, I gotta go take care of these things, or kids are at daycare or whatever, I gotta go take care of these things before they come back. So a lot of the times, even when moms are off duty or have a moment, they are often spending it doing prep work for life as a mom, where traditionally those same expectations aren't placed on dad. It's all fine. It's all good. I'm not going to tell you how to parent or how to live your life. That's not the point of this episode. Do whatever you want, have kids, don't have kids, be a single mom, have 6 baby daddies. I don't care. That's not my point. My point is, let's examine the ways in which women are asked to do these things. But the word I'm looking for is expected to do these things, because we aren't even asked to do them. It's just how the cookie crumbles. And it's because society has set it up that way. And if we don't analyze it and examine it, we don't even know what's happening. We're just burnt out and exhausted. And we can't communicate what we need from our male partnerships. So let's explore a little bit. And I feel the phrase weaponization of motherhood might be triggering for some. It might be triggering for some to think about how motherhood is weaponized against women, especially because it is such a beautiful thing to be able to create life, to be able to nurture life, to birth life into this world and have someone you love so much. To think about society weaponizing that against women is so sick and twisted. But I think that is exactly the point. The patriarchy has taken this beautiful thing that, matriarchal societies uphold and center, and they've made it really, really detrimental to women thriving in this world, which doesn't really make sense. And I do feel we are at a point in time where, birth rates are declining. A lot of women are choosing to stay single and to not have kids, to not have a partner, let alone have kids with a partner, and also choosing not to have kids on their own. So less and less kids are being born. Less and less people are choosing to be parents. And I know that that's not a coincidence, is because we're at a place where women don't need to do this for their safety. like back in the day, marriage is still a contract and technically like a business transaction in that way. But that's like where marriage came from. It was like a contract. And then women's roles were just to like pump out babies and couldn't work and yada, yada, yada. And now we're in a place where women don't need a man to be successful and have like security and like money and safety. They don't need a man to have kids. But even with that, like there are so many studies that show that like single childless women like live longer, are healthier, are happier on average, like all of these things. So again, this like myth that you need kids to be happy is A, not true, but B, forced down our throats. And then once women have kids, there's minimal support for those women who have been taught that lie. And that is the sort of intersection that I really want to examine in this episode. Again, do what you want with your family and your family planning. Like that's not what I'm here for. I spent a lot of my life thinking I would never have kids. And now I'm entering a chapter where I really want to have kids. So also your opinion's allowed to change on this. Like, do you? I will say that marrying my husband and like being partnered with my husband made me want to have kids, because this concept that I'm explaining today is kind of why I never wanted to have kids, because I was like, ugh, like so much expectation for moms, like so much. And I get that some of that is like biology and like the baby needs the mom in a way that it doesn't need the dad, especially like in the beginning and during pregnancy. Obviously, it's like in your body. So some of that is just like nature, but the societal aspect of this like pressure and to not complain and to just do it and stay hot and stay on your career and stay this and stay that. Like I was like, that sounds awful. That sounds horrible. So having a partner that I know would be supportive and that I know would like, we would find a way to make it equitable where I'm not expected to be like super mom, because I'm not interested in being super mom at all. And I don't really understand why someone would want to be super mom, because just being a mom at all is like literally the hardest job. And I know people say that, but I feel like no one gets it. It's not a job. Like it's a lifestyle. It's like people are like, it's the hardest job, but it's not a job because you don't get to clock out. You know, that is your life. So yeah, I really do think there is a societal trap. Like even though I want kids, again, my point isn't to say don't have kids. I do want to like point to the societal trap that says, so where society really loves to paint motherhood as fulfillment, but then at the same time, they're using it as a way to limit women's ambition, to limit their independence. And it's like society's going to shame you if you don't want kids or you go against the grain, but then it piles on unrealistic expectations and then shames you like when you do become a mom. So I feel like it's such a wide margin for the lose-lose of this scenario that no matter what kind of woman you want to be, like you're sort of destined for shame and failure. And I can't stand that. That's a norm in our society. We see it all the time. Like we see how moms are just blamed for everything. You know, if a kid's acting out or something goes wrong, like in school, they're going to like blame the mom, where dads are just like praised for going to the kid's soccer game. Or like the example where oftentimes if the mom's on a night out, like girls' night out or out with friends or whatever, and the dad's at home with kids, people are like, oh, is dad babysitting tonight? And it's like, no, that's not fucking babysitting. That's your fucking child. Like you can't babysit your child. And it's just like such a normal thing to say in society. And I think language is everything and really speaks volumes with those sort of sayings or those sort of like normalized things to say to each other. Or like we've seen it time and time again where working moms are considered selfish and stay-at-home moms are considered like just moms and not doing enough as like a feminist woman in society or whatever like those expectations are for women nowadays. And it just feels like either way there's no winning, or either way there's just such an upside for loss and shame in it all. And again, I think it's twofold. I think number one, we need to talk about how society doesn't value or support moms. Like that is the patriarchy versus the matriarchy, where the patriarchy goes after like success and capitalism and like individualism. The matriarchy is like community, motherhood, emphasis on like moms and children, you know, and like children are like the center of the matriarchy. Patriarchy, not so much, you know? So as a society, like we aren't supporting moms just as a whole. And then the micro version of that's like more the macro lens. The micro version of it is like, because that is the norm as the baseline, then when you like zoom in on individual families and individual relationships, there isn't as much of an expectation to support moms within family structures either. I think some of the ways in which motherhood is weaponized against women is this myth of doing it all. And we've talked about it on previous episodes of the show, or at least just like mentioned it. But I really, really do think this is like the crux of so much pain and heartache and unnecessary shame. I feel like I keep going back to that word today, but like that is what is at the root of this, is trying to shame people into submission. So yeah, I guess it's that expectation versus reality. It's as if women are expected to be caregivers and breadwinners, or at least be excelling in their career and keep a spotless home and like stay fit and still have time for self-care. Like that's not realistic. A 2022 Pew Research Center study found that working moms spend nearly 15 hours a week more on childcare and household tasks than working dads. That's like a part-time job. That is, come on. I think that these unrealistic expectations lead to burnout. They take a major toll on women's mental health. I've seen it firsthand. According to the American Psychology Association, working mothers are significantly more likely to experience high stress levels than working fathers. Like, does that surprise anybody? That does not surprise me in the slightest. And I would be shocked if it surprised you. Like, I feel like that's like, duh, obviously. And as I said, like there's a lack of support systemically. Like even if you have a great home life and a supportive spouse, like there is a systemic lack of support. We have like childcare deserts, and childcare is like crazy expensive, and all of these things that make it so much harder for moms to mom. Yeah, we have no paid parental leave. The US is one of 6 countries worldwide and the only high income country that does not mandate paid parental leave in any sort of way, which is crazy. And for those who don't know, in the United States, we are in a massive childcare crisis. We were like not doing well in the childcare aspect of our country across the board, like no matter where you live, no matter what your income was. And then the pandemic happened and like, boom, childcare centers were just like wiped out in a lot of places. They couldn't stay open, and it made a situation that was already bad so much worse. And now we're in a childcare crisis. There's so many Americans who live in a childcare desert where they just don't have childcare facilities near them. Not to mention that the average cost of childcare in the US is $10,000 a year per child. That's so much. If you have 3 children, that's $30,000 a year. American like medium income is like $50,000 a year. Like that's insane. And again, in the US, there's just lack of support. There's lack of subsidies. Only 1 in 6 eligible families receive some sort of government assistance for childcare. So even though if 6 families are eligible, only 1 out of the 6 is going to receive that care. So it's just like, it's so systemic and it's so ingrained in our society, which, as you know, pro-life is a lie. You don't care if people die. So pro-forced birth movement, our culture in the US makes it systemically so hard to be a mom. There are so many failures on the systemic level for taking care of children and helping mothers and fathers, like families, take care of their children in the US. It makes it so hard for that. And they're on this campaign to make sure that people don't have a choice in their family planning. Make it make sense. Speaking of abortion being healthcare, being pro-forced birth is crazy to me, especially in this country where maternal mortality rates are so effing high. Black women in the United States are 3 to 4 times more likely to die from a pregnancy-related complication than white women. This is according to the CDC. I'm not like just making this up. Like this is real. And we know this. We know this time and time again. And it's for a plethora of reasons, mainly systemic racism, mainly that Black women aren't listened to, and the implicit bias that is within the healthcare system. So if you work in healthcare, don't dismiss Black women. Like we're dismissing them to the point where they're dying at 4 times the rate of white women. That's insane. That is insane. So yeah, if you're so worried about growing families in the US, maybe fix the childcare crisis and fix the maternal mortality rates, and women might actually want to have children. Another way that I feel like motherhood is weaponized against women is that not only are there not a lot of supports provided, it seems like women are almost shamed for needing support, like as if they're like punished for needing help. It's very stigmatized. For example, postpartum depression, it's such a stigma around it. 1 in 7 women have postpartum depression. And honestly, it's probably more. They probably just don't notice it. It's such an intense issue that affects so many women, and there's so little that's being done about it. And again, even if you have the best birth and the best baby and everything goes like the best case scenario, you got to think about your workplace accommodations. When do you have to go back to work? Do you get paid for taking time off? Some people can't afford to take time off and go back like right after boom, having a baby. Also like needing to pump at work, and if that's a safe place for you to have to pump and do stuff like that. Like there's like things that aren't up to you. Like if you're in a meeting and your tits are going to explode, like you got to go. Like you got to go pump. As a surprise to no one, the studies show that women with children are almost 80% less likely to be hired for a role. They are, of course, offered lower salaries when hired compared to women with no children. Studies also find that mothers are less likely to be promoted for leadership roles. Again, who does this surprise? And that their male counterparts are obviously going to be promoted over a mother with kids, which, no one is worried about dads, but yeah, let's worry about moms. But I think the biggest way that, and I've alluded to this earlier, that I think motherhood is weaponized against us is the fact that our government is criminalizing motherhood choices. Let's talk about abortion bans. Let's talk about the fact that states are trying to make it punishable by death penalty to have an abortion. That's like two wrongs don't make a right in such a serious way. Like, what are you talking about? You are going to kill women for having an abortion when sometimes abortions are life-saving healthcare. Like, make it make sense. It's especially cruel. I think your body, your choice all the way. You don't need a reason to have an abortion, but it's especially cruel when you look at places like Texas and South Carolina and Florida who have abortion bans with no exceptions for rape or incest. Like, why are you forcing women to carry these unwanted pregnancies? Why? Like, the pro-life movement is so fundamentally flawed, especially when looking at all these ways that you could focus on support to actually support children and mothers, like childcare, healthcare, things like that. But instead, you're focusing all your energy to stand outside abortion clinics where women are making really tough, personal, private decisions that you, frankly, don't know shit about. And you're going to sit there and judge them and yell at them? Ugh. Did you know that in states like Alabama, women have been prosecuted for substance use while pregnant, even if they go to treatment programs? So like, if you're like an addict and you're like, oh my gosh, I'm pregnant, I need to go to a treatment program so I'm not like doing what I'm addicted to while I'm pregnant, the treatment program might snitch on you and you could be prosecuted for that. It's just not safe to be a pregnant woman in the US at the moment, unfortunately. Like, it's heartbreaking to think that. And I know this isn't the case for like everyone, but like, we've already seen women die from these bans. We've already seen women die from these bans. This isn't like women are going to die from these bans. Women are currently dying and have died because of these bans. And again, don't come at me saying you're pro-life if you don't give a shit about these women who are dying because of these bans. That's not pro-life. That's pro-forced birth, period. No matter which way you slice it, these laws are focused on removing bodily autonomy, removing choices from women, and it puts them at greater risk for health complications, or if health complications arise, and it puts them at greater risk for legal repercussions. So if you actually wanted to support women and support moms instead of just pretending, like, we wouldn't even be here with the state of utter failure our country is providing to moms and women, and instead just focusing on these bans, which does nothing to help children. It does nothing to help the children in foster care. Actually, it makes things worse. We've seen time and time again, states with strict abortion bans, the maternal and infant mortality rates go up. They go up. Doctors are scared to be prosecuted. Doctors are scared to make the right medical decision for a mother and go to fucking jail about it. Like, in what world does that make sense? In what world? It's so unfair to take away a woman's choice to be a mom and force that upon them, especially in a society where the emotional labor and the workload is so forced upon moms. I've been saying emotional labor a lot. So if you don't know what that means, emotional labor is the unpaid work that you do to keep a relationship running. It's remembering everyone's birthdays. It's remembering to send your mother-in-law flowers on her birthday, like things like that. Keeping peace during family dramas. Remembering the grocery list. Remembering the this, the that, the other thing, you know? And I feel like emotional labor is honestly the patriarchy's stealthist trick because it is so ingrained into our society. It's unpaid, it's undervalued, and it's never fucking ending. Even in progressive households, women are still like the default manager of feelings and logistics. Like, that is just how it goes. Like, be real. If you're listening to this and you're a woman who's a mom, like, you're in charge of the dentist appointments, you know? You're in charge of making sure the kids have lunch. You're in charge of reminding your partner to call his mom. Like, true or no? And maybe not every single one of those is true, but often what I see is even when the husband or the dad is involved, like, they don't complete a lot of tasks. So they can help start or do like partial tasks, but they struggle to like do tasks start to finish. And that burden especially is placed on women to like start and finish tasks. So picking up where people are leaving off from and like always having to be the one. It's like they are the house manager. Like, you know, at work, if the buck stops with this person and they got to make sure the team's doing their jobs. And sometimes that means doing it for them. Like that's how it is at home, but no one talks about it. So there isn't even a lot of good language to like explain the phenomenon that's going on. You're just like, oh my gosh, I'm so overwhelmed. Why is my husband a piece of shit? And honestly, if your husband loves you, he probably wants to help. He just doesn't like, it's just so normalized for him too that he doesn't even know. Giving him the benefit of the doubt. Maybe not. Maybe he's a piece of shit. I don't know. So yeah, emotional labor is like ongoing and always happening with or without kids. And then when you add the like motherhood component, it just like through the roof, like so many things to do. And like with all this in mind, I can't imagine how someone would be anti-choice. A woman's ability and right to choose if and when she has children is such a critical factor in determining her freedom, her independence, her economic stability. Those are all the choices you take from someone by not letting them have that choice. And I get a lot of people in my comment section being like, oh, what rights did they take from you? What rights are they taking from you federally? Like that's not a right. Like your right to kill unborn babies, that's not a right protecting you. We're protecting the rights of these unborn babies. Women are not incubators. We are not cattle. We are not breeders. And when you take away our choices, whether you agree with that choice or not, when you put the government in between us being able to make our choice, when you're making choices for me, we have as much rights as livestock. And that's what you're taking away from women when you take away their bodily autonomy. You are treating them not only like second-class citizens, you are treating them like livestock. And we've seen since these extremely restrictive Trump-era abortion bans have been put into play, A, seen women die, as I mentioned, but B, we've seen other really intense legislation be brought up. Like, should women be able to travel without their husbands if they're pregnant? What? I'm sorry, what? Like, this is the starting ground. This is the tipping point. And it will get worse and worse. And the ways that they are going to try and enforce these laws are also going to be stripping back more and more rights. And if you don't think it will affect you, one day it will. It will. Whether you're a woman or not, like this is going to affect you. Because coming for someone else's rights, even if it doesn't affect you, prints the blueprint for them to start coming for your rights. So for those applauding them rolling back women's rights right now, you are literally cheering on the blueprint for when they come and take your rights. And you're an idiot for doing that. Use your fucking head. Read a history book for once in your fucking life. And I think that's the part of the conversation we're not talking about. Abortion bans don't just take away reproductive freedom, they force women to be mothers. They're forcing women into motherhood whether they're ready or not. And the consequence of that is women being pushed out of the workforce, women losing financial independence, and often women being trapped in cycles of poverty. Because these bans are going to affect poor women the most. If I wanted an abortion, I'm rich. If I wanted an abortion, I'll go get one. I can afford that flight, whether it's fucking across the border or across the pond. I can afford that flight. I'll get on a private jet about it. And that's the point. They want to keep women in poverty. They want to keep them dependent on men. They want to keep them out of the workforce. That's what these bans are doing. And the wives and the mistresses and the daughters of the legislators pushing these bans through, they're still going to be able to access abortion. It's just everyday Americans who aren't. It's economic control through reproductive control. And that's what so many people are missing about this. Is it moral to have an abortion or not? Because it's not about morality. It's not. Once the government is involved, it's not about morality. Once Roe v. Wade got overturned, it's not about morality anymore. It is about control. When women can't decide when they want to have kids, their career trajectories, their education, their choices and relationships, and their personal ambitions all get derailed. And the patriarchy knows this. Our government knows this. And this is why these bans are one of the biggest ways, the biggest examples of how motherhood is being weaponized at the moment. And as we sort of mentioned when we were talking about maternal mortality rates with the systemic racism happening in the healthcare industry, it shouldn't surprise you that these abortion bans are going to disproportionately impact women of color and low-income women. Because these are women who are already facing systemic barriers in healthcare, in education, and in employment. So let's connect the dots here, guys. I don't know how to spell this out any more simple. Let me hold your hand while I say this. Forcing women into motherhood piles on even more emotional and physical labor in a current society that has no safety nets to catch them. No paid parental leave, no universal health care, no universal childcare. Like, what are we talking about if you're going to force women to give birth and not provide any of these things for them? And I hate to be the one to break the news to you, but if your man voted for a politician who is pushing this kind of legislation, he thinks of you as property. He thinks of you as livestock. He thinks of you as a breeder, not as a person. He thinks of you as an accessory. He does not think of you as a human being. And this goes for your intimate partners, but this also goes for your family members, dads, brothers, whoever. So just know that. Like, you don't have to confront that. You don't have to do anything with that. Do whatever the fuck you want with that. But just know that when you're making these choices and when you are in relationship with people who believe these things, because that's the root of the root of the root. If you really thought of a woman as a real person, not a second-class citizen, not an incubator, you would believe it was her choice to make a decision. Even if you don't agree with the choice, it is her choice to make the decision. Okay, so what about those of us who want to be mothers, who want to have a family, who want to be in a relationship with a man and have a family with a man and be in a heterosexual relationship and have all these norms and society things like setting you up for failure? How do we push back on that and reclaim our time? Hopefully you have a supportive partner. That's like step number one. But if we don't, we'll still figure it out together. Don't worry. I think boundary setting is first and foremost. You got to set boundaries like a boss, and boundaries can feel really selfish and horrible, but you really just got to stop apologizing and you got to start saying no more. And, you know, a good reframe is that boundaries aren't selfish. They are revolutionary. Finding ways to share the load is essential. And again, it doesn't have to be equal, but if you can find ways that are equitable, I honestly feel like it will also help both parties in the relationship, because if someone is burnt out, both parties end up feeling that, whether the man has more free time or not. Like, he's going to feel you loathing your life and like not being a happy partner or person like that. You feel that, you know? I do feel like it's like a Chinese finger trap sometimes, where the more like the load isn't equitable, the more the woman is like so exhausted and burnt out, and also like feels like her partner is one of the children. So like not wanting to be as like turned on or sexual or intimate with him, because like, why would you want that if your partner's acting like a child and you're already raising children and now you have to like raise your husband too, like, you know? And it just really, really does impact the relationship, and it is negative for both of you. So loosen up. It's like trying to pull from a Chinese finger trap. What are those things called? Whatever. It's like pulling that, where really you just need to like lean into it and relax and just be like, okay, let's stop trying to make everything like, these are the cards we're dealt. These are the ways we are. Like, for most relationships, the man is going to make more money. The man is going to be the breadwinner. Like, especially like you heard all those stats I said earlier about mothers on trajectories in their careers. You know, you're less likely to get promoted. That just is what it is. So let's not make the conversation around contributing equal to the household when that is just like not what the outcome society is going to push us towards, and make it more about like how we can equitably show up for each other as partners and what that means for everyone. It's going to be different for everyone depending on how much you make and how many kids you have and where you live, and like, is family close by, and like there's so many factors. But like, again, it's like trying to find ways to share the load, and that starts with having an honest conversation with your partner, with your family, maybe with your workplace if that's available to you, and sharing responsibilities. And it's not nagging. It's not. It's like being fucking for real. As I talk about a lot on this show, one of the best things you can do is normalize rest and normalize asking for support. Asking for help is not weakness. Let's reframe that narrative. It's survival. It takes a village. It takes a village, and that is real. Find your village in any way you can. And rest isn't a reward. It's a necessary part of life. It's something your body wants to do every day. Whew, that was an intense episode, guys. I was thinking that was going to be a little more lighthearted than it was, but I guess I had a lot of pent up aggression with this. So let's end on some feminist affirmations, you know? Let's end feeling empowered. Channel that frustration, that very valid frustration I'm feeling and you are probably feeling as we talk through some of these injustices, and fuel it into empowerment with our soft girl era feminist affirmations. On today's episode, I wanted to do some affirmations that combat the emotional load, you know, since that has been our topic of conversation. So if this is your first time listening, feel free to say these with me, out loud with me in your head. If you're in public, feel free to pause if you want a minute to meditate on one that really resonates with you. But let's dive in. My worth is not tied to how much I do for others. My worth is not tied to how much I do for others. My worth is not tied to how much I do for others. It's okay to rest. And it's okay to ask for help. It's okay to rest. And it is okay to ask for help. It's okay to rest. And it is okay to ask for help. Sharing the load isn't nagging. It's what's fair. Sharing the load isn't nagging. It's what's fair. Sharing the load is not nagging. It is what's fair. Sharing the load isn't nagging. It's what's fair. I hope you take these and take some time to write down one thing you are going to stop doing this week. Bonus points if you're in a relationship and you communicate to your partner that you're going to stop doing it and that you would like them to pick up some of that slack. But again, do you? Not going to tell you how to live. Well, on that note, let's get on out of here. We did what we needed to do. Today, we exposed how society weaponizes motherhood. There's so many other points I could dive into on this, so let me know if you appreciated this kind of content and we can take it a little deeper next time. Because if there's one thing I can do, it is yap about the ways that society is trying to keep women stuck and all the ways in which emotional labor is the patriarchy's way of getting us to do free work that we are not thanked or appreciated for. If you're feeling overwhelmed by this information, remember, all you got to do is set some boundaries, share the load, reclaim your time. And if that isn't available to you right now where you're at, focused on just resting and being kind and gentle with yourself. That is the best place to start if you don't know where to start, because burnout is not a badge of honor. Thank you so much for joining today's episode. Like, comment, share, do all the things. I want to know how you felt about it. And join us next week where we will be diving into how homo social desires and social dominance shape the patriarchy. Stay tuned for some real talk. See you next week. And remember, you don't have to do it all. You don't have to do it alone. The patriarchy might be a mess, but you do not need to clean it up without any help. Thanks again for joining. Mwah. Bye.